morning. Now, as you may have heard us mention earlier, an ESRI report has shown that at least 70% of Irish people are living in homes that are under-occupied. That compares to an EU average of 35%. It begs the question, should we be asking people, particularly older people, it probably is, to downsize to help the ever expanding housing crisis? One person who believes that forcing elderly people to downsize is abusive, Gerard Scully, a spokesperson for Age Action Ireland, joins me now on the line. Also joining me in studio is John McCartney, the Director of Research at Savills. And John, I might start with you. Very good morning to you.
Hi.
The issue of underutilisation of property, like, it's remarkable. I suppose anecdotally we knew it was high here, but it's double the EU average. Why is that?
Well, we know that the average household size in Ireland is bigger than the EU average. So I think logically what it must mean is that our housing units are bigger than elsewhere, and that I think is a fact.
The idea of encouraging people to move to a smaller house, and we'll stick with that, with the encouragement, an incentive as opposed to a punishment. What sort of encouragements already exist? Do any exist?
Well, I think there's a natural financial incentive there if that was the only thing that motivated people, which we know isn't the case. We did some analysis ourselves on our own sales, and what we discovered was that those trading down were selling at a price point on average of about 1.1 million. Now, in fairness, Savills is mostly active in the big cities, Dublin and Cork, but so that reflects in the price point. But traders down were selling at 1.1 million and buying back into the market at 540,000. So assuming that they had their mortgages paid off, the people that were trading down, then, clearly they were picking up tax-free about 560,000 euro.
Because you're not paying any capital gains when you're selling the family home, as it were.
Indeed, if it's your principal primary residence. So that would be very attractive to people, perhaps older people, but not necessarily, but older people in particular, because maybe they're living on modest pensions, or indeed maybe they have adult children who are struggling themselves to get on the housing ladder, and they would like to give out cash gifts to those children to help them get started.
Gerard Scully, a spokesperson for Age Action Ireland, as I mentioned, on the line as well. Gerard, if we stick with this idea of encouragement as opposed to forcing anyone out of their home, there is, as John outlined, there is some encouragement there already in the idea that there's no CGT. You're not caught for stamp duty. You might have been in the past. Would you support other maybe financial incentives being put in place so that people who do want to downsize might do it?
Morning, Kieran. Now, I just have to say that there isn't a lot of older people, even in the cities, that have houses worth $1 million. I don't want to give the impression that all older people are sitting on huge assets. They're not. The idea of incentivising is not in itself bad or wrong, but I think older people feel that there's a very thin line between incentivisation and pressurisation. That older people are being targeted in this debate. That older people are seen as like bed blockers. They're sitting on assets that are houses that should be occupied by families. Well, that I think is wrong. That doesn't take into account the fact that older people, these are older people's homes. These are older people live in communities, the communities in which they wish to continue living in. That it's not just a financial issue. That this is a rights issue. That older people have a right to live in their own homes without being targeted or pressured or incentivised.
Yeah. Look, I think we need to be realistic here. That there's no political party that exists in Ireland or has ever existed that is going to start turfing people out of their homes to make way for bigger families. But the idea that people would downsize if they want, I suppose, is based on the idea, John, that there's somewhere for them to move. And are we kind of ignoring the elephant in the room here, that you can talk about, maybe your mother might be on her own in the 5-bedroom house. She wants to move into some nice apartment closer to her friends, closer to town, walking distance. But that apartment doesn't exist, maybe.
Yes, indeed. And I think that is really the crux of the matter. I think generally speaking, if people want to move, they like to stay, particularly if they've been in an area for a long time. They want to stay close to their origin, and they have their social networks built up and their habits and all of that. So that would be their objective. And the real problem is that we just aren't building the type of apartments in particular that would appeal to people that are trading down. Now, we saw last Thursday that housing completions are picking up very strongly, and that's great news for everybody. But when you think of the types of housing that are being delivered at the moment, there are certainly large family homes being delivered, and there are apartments being delivered, but the apartments that are being delivered are probably not the type of stock that would appeal to people downsizing in general. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but we're talking about apartments that are centrally located for young professionals, and increasingly apartment development is being directed towards the rental market. So really, there's no, I think, clear idea that we're going to have suitable stock available for people that might want to trade down from a house, maybe because it's getting too big for them, into a suitable apartment within the location they want to live.
All right. Well, look, let us know what you think out there. 53106 is the text number. That'll cost you 30 cents. Or as always, you can get us on Twitter at BreakfastNT. John McCartney is the Director of Research at Savills. And before John, you heard from Gerard Scully, spokesperson, of course, for Age Action Ireland. Thank you both very much for coming into us. Stay with us. Back after this short break.